The MBA rankings for 2025 have been announced, and while Harvard has dropped quite a bit in the rankings, even at Alba, it's been consistently mentioned. It seems that having a strong tech background or expertise in finance is important. On the other hand, Harvard has been known for its quantitative methods, and there have been many job placements in consulting firms, although consulting is currently tightening its hiring. With AI emerging, there might have been a bit of overhiring. Well, that's one analysis. And then there's the possibility of pursuing a career in PEIB. I would like to talk about the top 5 MBA programs. I also want to hear about Ms. Ebisu's PE internship during her time in Chicago, as well as her experience with PE investments at Goldman Sachs. First, I would like to take a look at the rankings. Yes, indeed. The US news rankings are quite reliable, I think. They don't seem to have much of an advertising element. So let's take a look. For the best business schools of 2025, Wharton is ranked first. That's the University of Pennsylvania. Second is Kellogg. And in the same country, Stanford, followed by Chicago Booth in 4th place. MIT, then Dartmouth. Harvard is tied for 6th place along with New York University, which has been rising significantly. Everyone is doing well. Columbia University is tied as well, so it's in 9th place. Then is it 10th? Yale is also very strong in private equity, asset management, and hedge funds. Recently, their employment rates have been good. UC Berkeley is in 11th place. Then it's Virginia Darden. And then Duke, followed by West Virginia Cornell. Yes, Texas. Texas has also been rising quite a bit in the rankings. Then Emory, Carnegie Mellon, Pepperdine, UCLA, Vanderbilt, and so on. That's how the rankings look. Yes. And a brief analysis of these rankings. I've summarized it, but I'd like to go from the alpha site. This is an analysis based on the current rankings. This is just the current rankings written as they are, focusing on the top 10 schools. It has been noted in various media that HBS has slipped quite a bit, and the main reason is that the employment rate was very low, even around February. It was mentioned that even at the time of graduation, there are people who haven't secured a job yet, so the employment rate is low. Additionally, the starting salary is also a factor in these rankings. Although the starting salary is considered a bit low, it's still relatively average for an MBA graduate. However, compared to other schools, Stanford exceeds $200,000 and Wharton also exceeds $200,000, while HBS is at $190,000. It was around that amount. Also, the rankings do consider GMAT scores and GPA, although they have a smaller portion in the overall evaluation. That's what was mentioned. Yes. On the other hand, Wharton has become number 1 this time, recognized as a leader in practical finance skills. Wharton is a finance school, and its graduates, particularly from UPenn, are said to have the highest average salary in the United States. It's a finance school, but the focus on finance and practical skills seems to have positively impacted employment opportunities. Their employment rate is reportedly very strong. Regarding curriculum updates, the introduction of AI and data analytics into the finance courses has been well received. Yes, and also the proportion of international students is quite high, which contributes to diverse perspectives, and this seems to have influenced the rankings. Additionally, Stanford is strong in tech and entrepreneurship, so schools strong in tech are ranking high. I'll introduce Kellogg later, but Kellogg, known as a marketing school, has also introduced programs incorporating AI. Then there's PE. Kellogg has developed something like a PE track, and it seems they are really working hard to update and catch up with the curriculum. Yes, that's a brief summary. Here it is. Harvard, HBS has been losing its edge, which highlights the limits of the case method. Harvard has been focusing extensively on the case method. Well, regarding the limits of the case method, there's a focus on hands-on technology. Areas like competency search, AI, coding, and data analytics are not really covered by the case method. Indeed, that it ends up being purely discussion, and there's a lack of theory and tech integration. However, schools like IT and Wharton, as well as MIT, have business analytics tracks and are focusing on technology, which is why they are climbing in the rankings. I'm sorry? Yes, that's right. Exactly. So, Harvard too in the past had a background in such times. But what's with that case? It takes 2 to 3 hours to prepare, yet you don't learn any technical elements at all. You know, it's quite challenging because even in the tech industry, big tech companies are relentlessly laying off a large number of non-tech project managers. Well, just doing the case method. Even if you get into management, it's quite difficult to catch up with tech, isn't it? That's the feeling I get. Yeah. Yes, that's about it, I guess. Also, it mentions program flexibility, and Harvard primarily offers a 2-year full-time program. Meanwhile, Kellogg and Wharton offer part-time options. They have various programs like MBA and short-term ones, Stanford as well. Well, the Graduate School of Design, GSD, is basically a 2-year full-time program, but they also have the mid-career MSX program. Yes, they do. That's the situation. Now, shall we take a look at the PE section first? Yes. This is about Kellogg, where they have established a private equity and venture capital pathway, which is about a year old. It's a very recent development, and they are starting to focus heavily on the PE track. There's also a private equity lab, and they offer a program called Shape Your Career in Private Equity. Then there's Columbia, which is known as a finance school. Being in New York, naturally, some people go straight into investment banking in New York, but they also have a private equity program. And then there's Chicago. It's also the alma mater of Mr. Irie, and in terms of an MBA career path in private equity, they have detailed programs within their concentrations. If you are an interesting person looking for a career in private equity after investment banking, there is no better place to hone new skills than Chicago Booth. So Chicago is quite prominent. It says it's the strongest program. Mr. Ebisu might agree with that. Yes, that's what it is.
Yes, thank you. Well, as it is really written here, if you could mention the rankings a bit. The rankings, well, as we always say, just having an MBA or finance is no longer enough. Whether data-driven learning is incorporated or not is significantly impacting the rankings. Especially schools like Wharton, Kellogg, and Chicago, as we've mentioned before, are data-driven. Programs like data science and financial engineering are being integrated with great effort and speed, especially at Kellogg. Indeed, well, you know, the so-called AI-related tech MBAs, or the previously mentioned PEE programs, I think people only associated Kellogg with marketing. However, they have made a significant shift, which is probably why they are now ranked second. This includes things like MBA degrees focused on business AI and even private equity. The program I mentioned earlier, yes, well, it's quite impressive. I really think Kellogg is amazing. They quickly realized that the era of consulting is over, even though there were many consultants. Kellogg was known as a place where you could get into McKinsey, but they sensed the urgency early on and clearly shifted to AI and finance. Honestly, I think there weren't many people who went to Kellogg wanting to do finance before. Well, I think things are going to change quite a bit from now on, yes. Well, speaking of Harvard, as I've mentioned before, Harvard is ranked the same as NYU, so you can view it that way. NYU itself is quite strong in tech and finance. However, Perhaps the overall level of students is a bit lower compared to Harvard, but the slowness of Harvard in catching up with finance and tech, and also the case method, is quite significant. You could say it's the curse of the case method, or because of the case method, they can't innovate, which is clearly a hindrance. In this fast-paced world, especially with AI, probably all those case studies, with AI, you can just snap a photo of the case, no, or just throw the PDF directly into ChatGPT. It will spit out all the key points in 2 seconds. I wonder if we even need cases anymore. In a world where the quality of learning, or rather the way we learn, has completely shifted paradigms, is there really any point in spending 2 or 3 hours in a group discussion? That's the question. But at HBS, in the MBA world, the case method, including the research by professors and researchers, is still very much emphasized. They have built this position through tremendous effort, but because of that, they are not keeping up with the new era. This is something that is happening within the MBA program industry. So there's talk about shifting focus to entrepreneurship because there's no other choice. But entrepreneurship is moving at a much faster pace like AI. So it's like, should we really go there now? This isn't specifically about Harvard or anything. It's a common story in business. Therefore, when you think about where to choose for your future, you should consider business finance. Tech, data, and AI are all built in. I think it's best to attend a school that is trying to catch up and upgrade its programs in this area. So please consider such options when making your choice. We also recommend places that align with your long-term goals. For example, Chicago offers dual programs in MBA and computer science, as well as in data science. I think attending such programs is the strongest option. So I encourage everyone to come to Alpha early, sir. Considering your desired future career direction, it's important to verify these aspects. It's definitely better to enroll in programs that can drive your career forward and are currently at the forefront. Yes. So, shall we move on to that point?
Today, we're discussing rankings and another topic, the PD career track. So, it's quite common to transition from NB to a PD career, or to move from an MBA to an investment bank and then to PE. So, let's talk about the key points for succeeding in a PE career. Thank you. I think many people aim for careers in PE or investment banking.
In an MBA program, well, yes. People who are already working in investment banks, securities firms, or doing M&A at firms are probably already learning about these things. But on the other hand, people who are or were in business companies or ventures can also learn about M&A or PE investments in the program. However, what's important is that in a PE career, networking is everything. It says network is more important than the coursework, and I truly believe that. I really think so. Studying is important, it really is. I mean, studying is important, especially since we're spending tens of thousands of dollars on it. Of course, studying has things to learn and gain, but having been involved with Alpha for about 17 years, helping many people get into top MBA programs and graduate schools in the West and Asia, and supporting their careers afterward, I think. Well, to put it simply, those who go all the way to an MBA to study are fools. And the same goes for a master's degree. Even if you work hard to get a 4.0 GPA in an MBA or master's program, nothing happens. Nothing happens at all. In fact, the schools themselves have a policy that you don't have to mention your GPA during job hunting. And they have a policy that you shouldn't say it. So frankly, no one cares about your grades. What's important is how much you can leverage the MBA network to bring the career you want in investment banking, asset management, hedge funds, or private equity funds into your hands. That's where you should be spending your time. Occasionally, there are people who say they're top students in their MBA program, but those are often the ones who don't do well in job hunting. It's meaningless, right? Why are you going to an MBA? It's like, don't study. Well, I'm speaking in extremes here. Studying is important, but it's not the most important thing. Your career is more important. If you get the practical experience, you can do M&A, private equity investments, and LBOs. So as long as you meet the basic requirements, you don't need to obsess over having a high GPA or being an outstanding MBA student. And then, well, the so-called interview preparation can be done with alphas, with AI training or something like that, or with such preparations. So probably just doing alphas preparation is enough. And what's important is how much you network. And on top of that, I want you to go to an investment bank or a PE fund. Well, it says something similar here, but the MBA in this third part, the MBA itself is essentially the mechanism, the gateway to networking. So, for example, whether it's Chicago, Wharton, Columbia, or even Harvard or Stanford, going to Stanford because you want to get into a PE fund doesn't make much sense. However, if you want to do VC in Silicon Valley, start a business or tap into that network, isn't it the best place? And of course, if you go to finance schools like Wharton, Chicago, or Columbia, there are a lot of senior people in investment banks, PE funds, and asset management. Through networking with such people, you might get opportunities like, why don't you come for an interview next time? Therefore, especially in something like a PE fund, the number of people is very small. In investment banks, rather than relying on networks, they usually have regular recruitment as an event. They create events for recruitment, but still, recommendations from insiders are obviously important. References are crucial. Therefore, how you can draw in such networks is important. That's really important. When I was at MV in Chicago, I wanted to intern at a PE fund. Naturally, internships at PE funds are rarely open positions. So I networked and got introduced to various people. Then I got connected to someone inside the PE fund, sent them my resume, had an interview, and got the okay. After getting the okay, of course, I prepared thoroughly for it. I prepared thoroughly, went through the interview, got the okay, and received the internship offer. So when I say I got an internship offer from a PE fund, most of the other MBA students would be like, where was that posted? They'd ask which site it was on, but it wasn't posted anywhere. First of all, it's not posted anywhere, and right now at Alpha, those who got accepted into top MBAs in the US this year and are interested in PE funds are already able to network independently because they've been accepted. So they are networking with PE funds and have already started meeting with people inside those organizations. Therefore, if you got accepted into an MBA this year and haven't done anything, you're already out at that point. Ebi-san, please go ahead. Now, yes, please go ahead. Without a network, yes. And as Yumi-san mentioned, without a network, strategic networking, the opportunities in PE are very limited. Or rather, I think they are almost non-existent because, there are few seats available. It's not something that just falls into your lap. PE fund opportunities aren't like a world where they take 10 people every year. Therefore, it's really important to actively engage in networking, and it's also crucial to attend a school where you can build such a network. Yeah. So what often happens, and it happened recently too, is that someone goes to an MBA program in Europe and then asks if they can get into American firms like Goldman, KKR, or Carlyle afterwards. No. If you want to join American investment banks or American private equity firms, then you should go to the US. I told them, if you want to go to an American investment bank, you should aim for an MBA in the US. But they said, well, I got accepted, so I'm going to an MBA in Europe. So European MBAs and such. Well, it's almost no chance, right? Getting into a PE fund and even investment banking is quite uncertain, I think. Yes, of course. For example, if you're already in Europe, like in London, and you're at LBS or Cambridge or Oxford, and you're aiming to get into the sell side in London, like investment banking, then there's a chance. But then that you have to compete with the people in that market, right? So you have to win there, which means in the end, you really have to. If you're in Europe, you should aim to work in Europe. If you're in Asia, you should aim to work in Singapore or Hong Kong. If you're in America, you should aim to work in America, or for example, in your own country. Even if it's Japan or another country, if you're in an American MBA program, and you can aim for positions in the US, as well as positions in Hong Kong, Singapore, or London. Going to an American MBA program really broadens your options so that, well, if you want to work at a bank, the network value and career opportunities are the widest. In other words, you can work anywhere globally. So I think it's highly recommended in that sense. Yes, by all means. I hope you consult with Alpha as soon as possible. And then, regarding today's point about the 5 recommended MBAs, if you want to go to a PE fund or investment bank, the first is Wharton. The second is Chicago Booth. Personally, I would like to put Chicago Booth first. But well, Wharton was ranked first this time, so I did that. Then third is Columbia, and fourth is Stanford and Harvard. And as for those at Stanford and Harvard, most of the people who can go into PE are former investment bankers, former Goldman Sachs, or, well, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, and such. People who worked in investment banking at those places often go to Stanford or Harvard and then jump into a PE fund, yes. And, well, there are a few from INSEAD, I mean, there are some who go into PE funds, depending on which PE fund they like, but it's not that bad. Actually, in terms of balance, well, there's Singapore, actually. I mean, it's in Singapore and France. So relatively, there's also in London. And I think they have the strength of being able to reach Singapore as well. So, well, if you're aiming for schools around this area, it becomes much easier to get into American investment banks or B funds. Once you get in, your salary will be $250,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. And you'll also receive carry incentives. So yes, in no time at all, I think you can receive incentives of over $1 million. So definitely. Well, there aren't many industries as interesting as this, especially in investment banking. Although stock prices are somewhat volatile now, due to Trump's policies, as I've always said, Trump tends to favor investment banks. So he implements policies that benefit them. In that sense, investment banks and private equity funds, which naturally engage in M&A, prefer lower stock prices. So, investment banks and private equity funds are likely entering a global boom period, a golden age of golden ages. If you don't expand now, there might not be another chance to profit. These markets tend to get exhausted and end. So, for those who haven't gotten an MBA yet, it's absolutely essential. I think it would be better to go to MBA if you went there in 2016. Yes. So if you want to go to MBA and then to P Fund Investment Bank, you can come to Alpha anytime and consult with us. We do resumes, essays, recommendations, interview preparation, school selection, campus building, and all that support. So I hope you will consult with Alpha as soon as possible.
Yes, please feel free to consult with us. And preparations for the 2026 MBA admissions have already begun. Start preparing now and aim to apply in the first round. Yes, the first round indeed. First, prepare for the first round. After that, you can also apply to different schools in the second round or later. Please feel free to consult with us regarding the schedule.